I recommend that you don't just go for heel hook digs randomly from outside Ashi. You need to move your body to a position that actually allows you to generate heel exposure.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight as Alpra.
Hey guys, welcome to the Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. Welcome back. Today, we have episode 19. We are going to discuss outside Ashi Garami and everything that is outside Ashi Garami. But before I do, I would like to please remind you, like, share, subscribe to the show, share this episode with your friends, leave comments in the comment section. If you'd like to support or contact the show, check the links in the bottom. Also, please donate to Maui, Lahaina for the wildfires that have taken place there recently. And we have lost a really great jiu-jitsu academy there, Aloha Roll Academy, which is run by Professor Gilberto Castro. Please check out the links in the bottom if you want to support this academy. And of course, the town of Lahaina, Maui. They need our help right now. Okay, guys. Outside Ashi Garami. So what is it? By now, I feel like everyone kind of knows what this position at least looks like. If you're not, you're probably not up to date with the current meta of jiu-jitsu, or you are not a no-gi grappler. Because in the gi, outside Ashi, often gets you caught in leg drags. But from no-gi, it can actually be quite a formidable position. And essentially, it's an ashigarami with your 2 feet on the outside of your partner's hip, as opposed to one leg being on the inside in a standard irimi ashigarami. Your 2 feet are on the outside with a closed circuit, meaning closed wedges. Your feet are crossed. Generally, the attacks that we're looking for from this position are outside heel hooks and ankle locks. So that's not to say those are the only attacks, but those are generally the main attacks that we're looking for from this position. Here's some common misconceptions about outside ashigarami, at least ones that I have heard echoed from other jiu-jitsu personalities and what I've believed, my own personal beliefs up until recently. And that was that outside Ashi is a low percentage position. Kind of a misunderstood position where outside Ashi is easily countered. And we'll be going into all the different counters that can occur. And also that outside Ashi is not an asymmetrical attacking position, meaning it's not an unfair advantage for you attacking to put your opponent in outside Ashi, okay? For the longest time, me and my professor Rob, we kind of thought that outside ashigarami is a position that really doesn't leave you with a lot of great attacks, because generally outside heel hooks are more difficult to get than inside heel hooks, and the breaking potential from an outside heel hook is less great than an inside heel hook. That being said, it's pretty easy to understand why, if you're well trained in this position, why it could be an advantageous position. Most people that I've trained with up until a couple months ago thought that outside Ashi is kind of a disadvantage to be in that position, that you're actually putting yourself at more of a disadvantage than an advantage, and that the best play to do from there is to pass your partner's foot to the inside and go into 50-50. So outside Ashi becomes 50-50 if you take your partner's foot and pass it to the inside, which, yes, gives you access to the inside heel hook, but also you are susceptible to inside heel hook. So when you are in a 50-50 position, a mirrored position, it's symmetrical. You each have inside heel hook, whereas an outside Ashi, it is actually asymmetrical. You can attack your partner's foot, and your partner cannot attack your legs while your feet are crossed, okay? And again, we're going to go into the counters and how to stay safe and all that stuff as the show goes on. So just as a mindset for outside Ashi, when you put yourself there, change your mindset from a position that is not effective to a position of asymmetrical value, okay? And what really hit home for me here for this concept was watching Gordon's attacking the legs, okay? He says, outside Ashi is a position that he loves to go to, even though we don't see him do it. He funnels his game towards inside heel hooks more when we see him do leg locks. But he says people don't look at it as an advantageous or asymmetrical position because they have bad mechanics, because they don't actually believe they can break someone's leg from there. But if your mechanics are good, I assure you it's an effective position. I also believe that if you get good at outside heel hooks, that all of your heel hooks will improve. I remember my professor Rob did some privates with Eddie Cummings in New York years ago. And this is actually the foundations of when he came back and developed our leg locking system. And he said a big part of this, the foundations of his system, was getting inspired by these private lessons that he did with Eddie Cummings, and that Eddie Cummings basically described the inside heel hook as a grenade, whereas the outside heel hook is more of a scalpel. That the outside heel hook requires much more attention to detail and finer mechanics, which is true. And like I mentioned earlier, the outside heel hook, it's not as easy to create tremendous breaks as it is for inside heel hooks. Okay, so the breaking potential is greater on the inverted heel hooks than the outside heel hooks. Let's talk about some main goals that you're going to have when you enter outside Ashi Garami. First of all, I think it's really important to keep your partner's hips down, meaning try to keep their hips on the floor. If their hips are on the floor, it'll be easier to generate breaking power than if they stand up, and it'll also be harder for them to escape and go into guard passing positions if they can stand up, okay? It'll be harder for them to pass the guard and take your back and do all those things if you keep their hips on the ground. So just like many leg entanglement positions, I recommend trying to keep their hips down or manage the height of their hips, prevent them from getting into base, okay? Also, maintain closed feet. And we'll look at why we want to do that. But essentially, when your feet are crossed, it becomes very, very difficult for your partner to now go into counter leg locks on the outside Ashi Garami. Okay, look to generate heel exposure. So whenever I go into outside Ashi, the first thing I do is ask myself, is there heel exposure here? Is there a potential chance that I'm going to be able to create heel exposure? And also, another thing to think about is a Achilles lock and a heel hook being used as a dilemma from the outside Ashi, which we will discuss. Another thing, just from any leg entanglement, it's generally preferred to gain double trouble or control of the secondary leg. Okay, so generally in Ashi Garami, you're going to have a primary leg. That is your opponent's leg that is within your Ashi Garami. That's the leg that you are going to be able to apply greater breaking power to because you have wedges around their ankle, knee, and hip, ideally. The secondary leg, which usually you only have control of with your upper body, not going to say it's impossible to submit your partner with the control of this leg, but it's going to be generally harder to create breaking pressure when you don't have an Ashi Garami. So getting double trouble or control of the secondary leg is generally used as a control mechanism, and then from there, looking to separate your partner's legs and gaining heel exposure or whatever you're going to do. Okay, of course you can attack the second leg, but it's more difficult. So in terms of leg positioning, there's going to be different leg positions that you can do in outside Ashi. Okay, you could do full ankles crossed, or you could do a full triangle where you lock your foot behind your knee. As a general rule, when you're using Ashi Garami, your wedges will be tighter when you have a semi-sankaku, meaning your ankles are crossed, as opposed to a full sankaku, meaning your legs are triangled. Why is this? When your legs are in a full triangle, the space between your knees is greater, and therefore there's more of a chance that your partner's legs are going to slip out. When you have a semi-sankaku and your ankles are crossed, your knees are actually closer together and your wedges are much stronger, okay? There are exceptions to this rule. For example, if I have an outside Ashi, my inside leg could be covered by the outside leg with ankles crossed. But I could also turn my hips downward toward the floor, put my outside leg on top of my partner's hip, and then cover it with my inside leg. Okay, and usually I go into this when I've already gotten a dig on my partner's heel. So I've exposed the heel, I've got a dig. Usually I prefer to cover my outside leg with my inside leg in a full triangle. Okay, so your feet can look a couple of different ways when you're in outside Ashi, but the common theme is that they're going to be crossed during the breaking phase of the submission. Of course, there's also post Ashi Garami. This is a position that Gordon talks about in attacking the legs. He talks about stepping on his partner's hip with 2 feet, and this can create a lot of breaking power generally for ankle locks, but also can be used to generate heel exposure as well. Let's talk about grips. So we've talked about leg position, different configurations that we can do with our feet, but we can also talk about some different grips with our arms. Okay, so generally, well, first let's just discuss Achilles grip versus a heel hook grip, okay? An Achilles grip is where you take a scoop over your partner's leg and you over your partner's ankle, and you try and bring your hand as close as you can to your shoulder. And the closer your hand is to your shoulder, the stronger the wedge is over your partner's leg. Whereas a heel hook grip, as if you are in the process of digging a heel hook, while yes, you can achieve heel hooks with this grip, it is not that great for control. Okay, your partner can explosively rip their foot out, they can explosively spin and just free themselves of the lock. Whereas an Achilles grip, it's more difficult for your partner to just rip their foot out because your partner's heel and Achilles will get caught on your wrist like a knot on a rope when you have an Achilles grip. Also, we should just discuss when we're talking about the dilemmas between ankle lock and heel hook, we should talk about the foot posture and how that relates to this dilemma. So if your partner is pointing their toes down into plantar flexion, meaning like ballerina toes, okay? If they're pointing their toes down, it's going to be very, very difficult to get heel exposure on them, but they will be susceptible to ankle locks. Likewise, if they do the ankle lock defense where they kick their foot straight like they're putting on a boot and punch their foot into dorsiflexion, this is going to be difficult for you to ankle lock them, but more easy for you to attack heel hooks. So again, if their foot is pointing up like a opposite of a ballerina toe, heel hooks are available. If their foot points down like a ballerina, ankle lock is available. And it's important to understand this difference and to play the two attacks as a dilemma when your partner is in the defense phase of outside Ashi, okay? Generally, I also like, when I'm getting trying to generate heel exposure, I like to take my other arm and scoop the knee. When you scoop the knee over the IT band and roll the knee inward, you create heel exposure. And this will actually give you an opportunity to go into your heel hook. If your partner reads this and they point their toes down into plantar flexion, this is a perfect time to switch to an Achilles grip and start setting yourself up for an Achilles lock. Okay? If they kick their boot on nice and tight and avoid the Achilles lock, we go back into the heel hook. And so this is how the dilemma is played. Another thing, when we talk about the heel hook ankle lock dilemma, is we should discuss how your body positioning is different from ankle lock or heel hook. Usually for an ankle lock, again, our partner has pointed their toes down, and we've, ideally, in the way that I like to do an ankle lock, I like to put the sole of their foot on my ribs, okay? And then from here, we get a nice tight grip, and we can start ripping away. In an ankle lock situation, usually I like to stomp on the hip, and I like my other foot to go into a butterfly Ashi position. We could also stomp the hip with 2 feet, but I need to create distance with my hips from my partner, usually by way of like a hip escape. So in an ankle lock, I like my hips to be farther away from my partner as I'm going into my braking mechanics. But a heel hook, I actually want my hips to be as close as possible to my partner so that I have as much purchase on his knee line as possible. And ideally, his leg is at somewhat of a 90-degree bend. Okay, so ankle locks, hips are farther away, so we can really use our length to extend and finish the ankle lock. Heel hook is more of a rotational submission. I need to be close so I can apply that ratchet effect to my partner's leg as a lever. And then there's another grip, the shotgun grip. Shotgun grip is good, but I find the Achilles grip is more effective for preventing slippage. But the shotgun grip is essentially where you just kind of cup your partner's calf and close your elbow, like you're sort of kind of like you're shelving or holstering like a shotgun, I guess, and you're about to shoot it from the hip. Okay, this is another grip you can use, but again, generally I like to use ankle lock grips, and we will talk why in a moment. Let's talk about some common problems that have to do with outside Ashi. Okay, first of all, when you are going for a heel and there is no heel exposure, you can expose your back. And this is why I think a lot of people gave up on outside Ashi. They would go to outside Ashi, they'd dive on the heel hook when their heel was not there, and now their partner is starting to take their back. And so they're like, well, that was shitty. I got my back taken. Why would I ever use this position? Well, if you use an Achilles grip from the outside Ashi Garami, it's incredibly difficult for your partner to take your back because they cannot free your foot. So just have the confidence that when you're an outside Ashi, if you go to an Achilles grip, your partner can't take your back. Okay, it's this belief and this confidence in this concept that will allow you to transition from Achilles lock to heel hook and will allow you to go to outside Ashi for long periods of time without your partner taking your back or smashing you with a guard pass. Okay, so in a sense, when I go to outside Ashi, I'm not rushing to the heel hook, but rather I watch my partner's reactions and I'm patiently waiting. If I notice that there's a chance to get heel exposure, again, I have that scoop on the IT band, I roll the knee to the inside, and immediately I catch my dig, okay? I'd like to talk to you about a concept that, well, I mean, I say I developed it, but again, did I invent anything in jiu-jitsu? No. I'm not trying to, speak above my pay grade or whatever, but this is a concept that was not taught to me that I feel I discovered. And that is the idea of perpendicular hips, okay? Or let's just say my hips are perpendicular to my partner's shin, meaning his shin is now going across my hips, okay? When you're looking for heel exposure, if your knees are facing in a parallel fashion to your partner's knees, so both of our knees are facing up, you're going to find it's incredibly difficult to get heel exposure, okay? But if you can move your body in such a way that your hips go perpendicular to your partner's shin, and essentially your shins are going to be on this angle with your partner's. I'm making a 90-degree angle. This is where the heel exposure is. So it becomes less about just digging from any old position, and it becomes more about angling your hips so that your knees are at a different angle from your partner's knees, okay? When I can get my hips on that angle where my partner's shin is essentially across my hip line, that's where I know I'm going to get heel exposure. And so if I don't get that angle, I don't even dig for the heel, because like I said, you can get into a lot of trouble digging for heel hooks from outside Ashi Garami when it's not there. Remember, if you're digging for heel hooks, you don't have an Achilles grip. And if you don't have an Achilles grip, that's when your partner can leg drag you. That's when your partner can take your back potentially, okay? So think about what I call the principle of perpendicular hips, getting your hips to a different angle where your hips are facing sideways through your partner's knee. Okay? Because if you think about inside and outside heel hooks, you always want to apply braking pressure with your hips through the side of their knee. So if in a situation where I'm doing an outside heel hook, I want my hips to be facing from the inside out. If I'm doing an inside out of your partner's knee, if I'm doing an inside heel hook, I want my hips to be facing outside in. So I can drive that hip force vector right laterally through my partner's knee. Okay, hopefully this can be understood and visualized. Again, if you want a video for this, I think I have one on my YouTube channel, and I will leave it in the extra resources section at the bottom of the show notes for you to check out. Okay, and of course, it's included in my online academy, which hopefully you subscribe to for $10 a month. That'd be a great way to support the show, and you get access to all my content, including the video I just talked about. All right, let's talk about the spladdle. This is a position that you can use essentially where you're scissoring your legs if your partner is coming up on top. So we discussed earlier, we want our partner's hips somewhat down on the floor. Now, our partner has started to build up height on top of us as if they're trying to leg drag us or crush us. And what we can do is we can use a spladdle where we scissor our legs and use our top leg to chop into our partner's hip. This does a really good job of keeping your partner back. However, because your legs are uncrossed, it exposes you to one of the best counters in the position where your partner can throw their top leg over and attack your top leg with an inside heel hook, okay? Remember, if your legs are not crossed, generally, you're susceptible to an inside heel hook by throwing that leg over the top. Okay, so we always want to keep our feet crossed when we're playing outside Ashi Garami. Another thing to think about, we're playing outside Ashi Garami and our partner starts throwing their leg over the top and looking to separate the feet. Another thing they will do is they will start to roll towards the inside heel hook. Okay, this does two things. It exposes your heel to the inverted heel hook counter, and it hides their heel from the heel hook that you are looking to get on them. So it's kind of a net double positive for your partner to throw the leg over and start inverting for the inside heel hook, okay? So whatever you do from this position, when you see your partner throw their top leg over to try and heel hook you, have your hand in the way and then wipe it back to the outside. Wipe it back to the outside. Always think about just wiping that foot to the outside. And as this is happening, I would be keeping an Achilles grip, because the Achilles grip will stop my partner from smashing me and taking my back, as we discussed. So my partner is throwing their leg over top, and I'm always using my top hand to wipe that leg back and away. Wiping that leg back and away, okay? Then there's a potential counter to this action that your partner might be doing, where they throw their leg over the top in order to catch the inverted heel hook, where we can do what's called the bolt cutter or the wrist-to-wrist toe hold. And this submission can be seen in the previous ADCC, where Giancarlo Bodoni defeated Owen O'Flanagan in, I believe it was a saddle position. It was either a saddle or a 50-50, and Giancarlo Bodoni got this nasty looking wrist-to-wrist toe hold from a seemingly disadvantageous position, and Owen O'Flanagan had to tap out, and it was a really cool moment. Okay, so now everyone knows about this move, the wrist-to-wrist toe hold or the bolt cutter, and this can be another option that you can do when your partner's trying to counter you from the outside Ashi. So what Gordon says in the systematically attacking the legs, when the leg comes over, we're wiping it to the outside, we're wiping the outside. If they persist, we can catch a grip, go wrist to wrist, and start going for the wrist to wrist toe hold. Okay, very, very interesting move. And while you don't see it very often, again, we have seen it at the highest level. All right, there's another thing that your partner can do. Your partner can straighten their leg, which again is going to make it difficult to submit them, because we want to have a bent leg to deal with when we're applying a heel hook. So imagine you get a nice dig and your partner's now extending their leg. In this situation, we can apply what is known as a heel knee bar, where you keep the heel hook grip, but instead of trying to apply a heel hook, you now focus on just keeping the leg straight and applying braking pressure into the knee. You can do this from the outside Ashi with the heel hook grip without really changing your legs in any way. And so what your partner will do is they'll realize their knee's getting knee barred from this position, and they will have to stick their leg back deep through. Like, why would they straighten their leg? They're straightening their leg because they're trying to clear their knee line. So they're trying to kick their leg straight and pull their knee out. As you apply the heel knee bar, they realize the only way to relieve the pressure is to jam their knee back inside, which exposes them to the heel hook. So again, another great dilemma with the heel hook grip, except instead of an ankle lock heel hook, it's a heel knee bar. Very cool move. You can see it on Systematically Attacking the Legs. I should get fucking royalties for this instructional. I give it so much clout. Okay, here is another thing that can happen if we're talking about a standing opponent, and that is the wedge, or as I called it when I did my first instructional years ago, I called it the scissor wedge, okay? The wedge is essentially where it's like a rolling back take of sorts. A very common example, if you wanted to look it up, would be when Kynan Dwarch fought Craig Jones years ago, okay? Craig had Ashi, and he had a scoop grip, meaning an underhanded grip, and Kynan just hit this wedge, took his back, choked him out. Okay, why did this happen? Because we need to understand the difference between a scoop grip, or an underhook grip as it is, and an Achilles grip. When you have an Achilles grip, your partner cannot wedge and take your back, okay? When you have a scoop grip, meaning an underhanded grip, your partner can scissor wedge you, take your back, okay? So it's really important to understand that as you're navigating through outside Ashi and you're looking for your attacks and you're being patient and whatever, you're just trying to keep the position, keep an Achilles grip. When you see that there is a chance for heel exposure, we can roll the knee in, get the heel exposure, okay? But at any point, if we feel like we're going to get passed, if we're going to get our back taken, if we're going to get smashed, we go back to an Achilles grip. Always go back to an Achilles grip by default, just as control, because it will prevent your partner from a lot of positional counters, okay? If you're getting smashed in a leg drag, this is a really common thing, okay? And what's scary is when your partner's standing over top of you, if your legs ever come undone, your partner can quickly dig a heel hook and just drop into the heel hook. We saw this with Johnny Grippo, or as he became known after that, Johnny Repo. I believe it was at the Emerald City Invitational like a year or two ago. Guy had outside Ashi, Johnny Grippo standing in the outside Ashi. He's thinking about passing or whatever. The legs became unlocked for a split second. Johnny just hit a quick dig and just ripped that leg off. He got a lot of heat for that online because, he ripped a submission without giving his partner a chance to tap. And that's how she goes at the highest level sometimes, right? So you really do have to be careful about leaving feet open because you can get heel hooked like this. But anyways, like I said, getting smashed from a leg drag position, as long as you have an Achilles grip, very, very hard for your partner to fully finish the leg drag, okay? They can smash your hips down and start coming up on top and stacking you. And what you can do is actually open your legs, do an inversion, and kick off the floor to reset the outside Ashi Garami. Okay, so you're an outside Ashi, your partner's starting to smash you to the side. Just put your feet on the floor, do an inversion, kick off your feet. So you uncross your feet now. 2 feet are on the floor. Kick them over where they don't have base, and then relock your outside Ashigarami, continue looking for heel exposure, etc. Okay? And we already discussed the inside heel hook counter, okay? Inside heel hook counter. When I trained with Oliver Taza for the first time, he came here years ago before COVID. He kept catching me with this. I would put him in outside Ashi, and he would immediately throw his top leg over and start inverting, start spinning to the inside for the inverted heel hook. He caught me many times. And so I learned that is a very formidable counter, and you have to be careful of the outside Ashi. So again, if your partners are really keen on throwing that leg over and going into the outside heel hook, just have your hand in the way as a frame and wipe it back to the outside. Just keep bringing it back to the outside. All right, let's talk about some attack vectors from outside Ashi and some of the things that we might look to do. Okay, so some of the stuff I really found that Jason Rao's dynamic outside Ashi is an instructional worth checking out. He goes over a lot of stuff that that Gordon doesn't show in Systematically Attacking the Legs, because all on outside Ashi, there's a ton of new material that I got from there. Of course, Gordon has trained with Jason. He's spoken very highly of Jason. Jason being from the Henzo lineage, being a black belt under Matt Serra. So obviously they sort of cross-pollinated many times in the same area, in the New Jersey, New York area. He talks about this position he calls the outside heist from outside Ashi. And essentially what that is where you're turning your body to the outside and you're getting height advantage with your hips. And from this position, you can kind of roll to your, if I'm rolling to the left, it would be my right shoulder. So I'm already kind of rolling all the way through, like belly down almost, with my head on the floor. And then from here, we have now created the rule of perpendicular hips, where we've created heel exposure. Generally, in this position, like I said before, I'm going to take a scoop on that IT band, go put my head on the floor. And what putting your head on the floor does is it allows your hands to be weightless. When your hands are weightless, we can use the hand to scoop the knee. We can use the other hand to get our dig, okay? And then from here, we can generate heel exposure, lock our legs in a full sankaku or a semi-sankaku, whatever we want to do, and finish the submission from that position. I recommend that you don't just go for heel hook digs randomly from outside Ashi. You need to move your body to a position that actually allows you to generate heel exposure. And so this outside heist position is one of them, okay? In terms of digging heels, I already talked about how digging heels with a scoop grip on the knee is super, super important, okay? Because it keeps your partner's, sorry, I got something on my teeth. Keeps your partner's knee bent, which is what we're looking for in a rotational-based submission, such as a heel hook. And scoop grips will make it difficult for your partner to extract their knee and clear their knee line, okay? Another thing Gordon talks about, he talks about this drill on his instructional that's super valuable. He calls it the cowboy drill. And what the cowboy drill is it's just the movement. For those of you watching, you can see me do it. You're just taking like a pistol out and then bringing it to your hip. So this movement of drawing a pistol and bringing your elbow to your hip is what we want to do when we dig a heel. Doesn't matter if it's inside heel hook, outside heel hook, okay? bringing your elbow down to your body, what this does is it immobilizes your partner's toes. So when we dig someone's heel, what everyone will do is they'll take a grip, and every beginner, including myself when I started learning heel hooks, they'll take their wrist and try and shelf their partner's heel here, okay? Don't get so infatuated with the idea of shelving your partner's heel. When you dig a heel hook, what you actually want to do is bring your elbow to your body and immobilize the toes. What this does is it locks your foot in dorsiflexion, meaning their foot is now locked at a 90-degree angle. And when this happens, the chances of heel slipping or losing your partner's heel are very, very minimized, okay? As a general rule, and this is a concept that Danaher talks about in his first instructional he did, Leglocks Enter the System, okay? Everyone needs to watch that one. Even though there's a lot of stuff is missing from there, it's a great instructional for mechanics and learning kind of the bread and butter of Leglocks. He talks about the idea of when you dig a heel, you want your forearm to run parallel to your partner's foot, not their shin. If your forearm runs parallel to your partner's shin, there's going to be heel slippage. If you close your elbow and lock off your partner's toes and point your forearm parallel to your partner's foot, that is the golden position where you are now wedging your partner's toes in your armpit, and then the wrist can come underneath and catch the heel. And you're going to have such stickier heel hook mechanics when you're digging heels when you do this. Okay, so scoop grip on the knee, always important for me. Get your body into a position where heel hook is available, when you can dig heel and create heel exposure, generally like an outside heist or anytime when you can misalign your hips with your partner's hips to create that angle we discussed. And closing your elbow, immobilizing the toes, getting your forearm parallel to your partner's foot. That's going to result in a stickier dig. Try it next time you're training. Another thing Gordon talks about when he's digging facing down, when he's doing heel hooks where let's say he's outside heisting and his forehead's on the floor, or maybe he's chasing a heel and his partner is rotating, he does something very, very interesting. Just for those watching, I'll be able to show you through the show, through the camera. He brings his knuckles to his back and then catches the heel. So he places his knuckle line behind his back on his ribs, okay? Like the front part of your hand where the wristwatch would be, he places that on the back, and then from there, changes the elbow position, and the lock is there. So whenever I'm chasing a heel and I'm facing down towards the floor, I always dig with my knuckles on my back, and then I catch the heel. This has really, really helped my percentage of digging heel hooks, especially when your partner's spinning and really trying to prevent the dig from happening. Okay. Also understand that a great attack vector from outside Ashi is you can go from this outside heist into an Oshiro Ashi or a reverse Ashi, where essentially you come up on top and you spin around and face your partner's feet. This is actually one of my favorite leg lock positions. This is going to set you up for knee bars, toe holds. Okay, you can double trouble from this position is very, very effective. If you want to see an outside Ashi in action, look at Gary Tonon's last MMA fight. Can't remember who he fought, but he was in the corner and he did a victor roll and rolled into his partner's leg, like going for a knee bar, and he collected both legs. So he had an Ushiro Ashi Garami, and then from here he had double trouble, and he went into this looked like a lat knee bar. Okay, and basically destroyed this guy's knee. It was fucking beautiful. Okay, so Ushiro Ashi, you can reach that position by just coming up and facing your partner's legs from the outside Ashi, and if you keep spinning, you can go into a cross Ashi or an inside sankaku, as it's also called. So just understand that reverse Ashi Garami is a position that joins cross Ashi and outside Ashi. You can use a saddle or cross Ashi Garami to go through reverse Ashi and go to outside Ashi, and vice versa. You can start an outside Ashi, go to reverse Ashi, and then go to cross Ashi. So if you don't know what these positions are, you're lost by now, but if you're somewhat savvy with the legs, you understand what I'm talking about, okay? Reverse Ashi also generally is a position where your hips are higher than your partner's hips. And this is a huge advantage because you're kind of sitting on your partner's hips or over their chest, and they can't build height in this position. So you can also go into this the topside saddle position or the inside sankaku, if you heist up and spin around and end up into this topside saddle, you're in a position now where you can choose to go, you can go back to reverse Ashi and go to outside Ashi. You can go into your partner's legs and start digging for inside heel hooks from this topside saddle. You could also start going into guard passing by punching an underhook and going into knee cut passing. There's so many dilemmas you can play from this topside saddle position, and you can get there by spinning from outside Ashi to reverse Ashi and then into the topside saddle. So I always tell my guys, when you're going to play outside Ashi, make sure you understand that reverse Ashi and cross Ashi are just, a transition away, and that it's great to sometimes go there. All right, let's talk about the inside heist. So we talked about the outside heist, which is you're in the outside Ashi and you get up, you build up, and you start turning to the outside. An inside heist, this is something new for me that I saw Jason Rao do. And from this position, you're basically turning to the inside now. Now, what does this require? Generally, this requires you to unlock your feet because it's very hard to go to the inside without unlocking your feet. You just make sure that your inside leg is not exposed. So you shorten your inside foot and therefore your partner can't expose you to any inside heel hooks, right? And this gives you access to a position called inside Ashigarami. So an inside Ashigarami is essentially the reaping position, okay? Imagine you have a cross Ashigarami or a saddle, and you take your partner's foot and you pass it to the other side. That's inside Ashigarami. Or likewise, you have a standard Ashi, and then you throw your top leg or your outside leg over to the inside with 2 feet inside. That's also an inside Ashigarami, okay? So when you do this movement, when you do this inside heist position, this is what's going to give you access to the Z-lock, okay? And the Z-lock is a position that's becoming very, very common now. We see a bunch of Z-locks now, made famous by a guy named Juni Ocasio, and he, I believe, credits Eddie Cummings again, the godfather of modern leg locks, Eddie Cummings. He credits him with teaching him the Z-lock, okay? We've seen guys like Diego Pato use this at ADCC. Lots of people using Z-locks now. So Z-lock is essentially a situation where you get your partner in an inside Ashigarami, but instead of going for heel hooks, you direct your focus on a full control over your partner's secondary leg. So if you can imagine this, you're reaping your partner's leg, and then you kind of forget about the leg that's getting reaped. Instead, your 2 hands are dedicated to the secondary leg, and then you create an ankle lock grip on that secondary leg. So from here, we can go into a couple different attacks. We could ankle lock the secondary leg. Our partner can't straighten their leg because they're in a reap, and they can't turn away because you have the secondary leg, right? Keeping in mind that when we're attacking leg entanglements, like 90% of your partner's escape and mobility will come from whether or not you have control over the secondary leg. Okay, so you getting control of the secondary leg prevents like spin out issues. So from this Z-lock position, we can go for the Achilles lock on the secondary leg. We could also go for a straight knee bar on our partner if he straightens his leg. So it's in our partner's best interest to kind of go with the reap and allow the turn to happen. If he straightens his leg, we can use a straight knee bar to absolutely destroy his knee. And this is one of the most, honestly, it's probably the scariest leg lock that I've ever seen. I saw Joseph Chen submit a guy with this earlier in the year, a straight knee bar, where he put this guy in a Z-lock and the guy just kicked his leg completely straight, and then Joseph just hipped into the side of his knee and absolutely destroyed the side of his knee. It's a really scary move. I think the B team had Ethan Creliston's brother grapple a girl, and he was talking all this shit before the match. And I believe she put him in the Z-lock and side knee barred and just destroyed his knee, right? And so this side knee bar is really, really a dangerous move. We never want to be caught in the Z-lock position and have our legs straight, okay? Honestly, it's because that move is so surprising. It's actually, I would say, safer to just get Z-locked and then submit because you may not see a side knee bar coming. So now that I've started to introduce this Z-lock to my students, I always give them the disclaimer of the side knee bar. I always say, hey, watch out for this move because you might not even know you're in a knee bar. You don't think a knee can bend that way or that there's even a submission there. It's absolutely possible to get side knee barred from that position. Last but of course, the Z-lock as well, if they do bend their knee, We can take an underhook grip of their ankle and start moving their ankle in a rainbow shape towards their shoulder to complete the Z-lock. Or what I prefer to do is actually just grab their big toe with a C grip. And I find I get a lot more leverage this way. Keep in mind, there are people who have really flexible hips, like my Professor Rob Bernacki. He can basically lie flat on his back with his legs in a butterfly goalie stance and his knees and feet completely flat on the floor. So he's very, very flexible in the hips, turning his knees inward. It would be, I guess, internal rotation, whereas I'm more flexible with my knees outward. Okay, I can make my knees open like a book, and they basically both touch the floor with crossed legs. Okay, but I'm not very flexible the other way. So a disclaimer when using the Z-lock is that certain people will have certain degrees of flexibility in their hips that may or may not prevent you from actually completing the Z-lock. But when that happens, we can always go into this, what I know it as the Sambo knot heel hook, which is where you're in the Z-lock position. And essentially, you actually give your partner the inside position with the free leg, and then you just cross your feet over top. So yes, their foot is on the inside, but they cannot easily untangle your crossed feet. And then from there, you just go in and do an outside heel hook, okay? This position can be seen when Gordon fought Nicky Rod at the last ADCC, when he heel hooked him in the finals of their division, okay? Gordon got an inside Ashi Garami, and then he switched to this outside heel hook and submitted Nicky Rod, okay? All right, we also want to talk about some transitions to 50-50. So I believe that if you feel like your partner is going to pass your guard, or maybe this is a gi situation, you find yourself an outside Ashi and you're like, well, I can't heel hook this guy. Maybe I kind of regret going to this position. You can always lift your hips up, make your partner's foot weightless, and pass it from the outside position to the inside position, and you will be in a 50-50 position, okay? So it's important to understand the interface between 50-50 and outside Ashi. I believe this is a good transition if you believe that you are more advanced in leg locks than your opponent. Because if you put your opponent in a 50-50 and you feel like you can legitimately win that shootout with them in the 50-50 because your leg locks are better, then you have an advantage in that position. However, it does deny you the asymmetrical character of the outside Ashi Garami, because both athletes now have a chance at the inverted heel hook. Okay, so it's really, really important to understand the pros and cons of going to 50-50. But sometimes I do it. Okay, I know in recent Danaher and Craig Jones DVDs, they actually have the idea that outside Ashi is less advantageous. So they say, well, sometimes when I'm defending 50-50, if I feel like I can't, if I know that I'm not going to be able to heel hook someone from there, I take my foot and I pass it to the outside Ashi as a defense, because they look at that as actually a less powerful position. Whereas Gordon has the opposite mindset of that position. Go figure. So I know what Danaher talks about when he's talking about submission escapes. He talks about how if you're in a 50-50 position and you feel like you're going to get heel hooked, pass your foot to the outside. If you can get your foot to the outside and your partner is now going for a dig, they're either going to expose their back or they're going to expose themselves to a guard pass. Okay, so it all depends what positions you like to attack legs from. Some people favor outside heel hooks. I would say most people favor inside heel hooks. Some people look at 50-50 as a good position to attack from. I know Lachlan Giles is big into it. I'm also big into it. Some people favor positions such as outside Ashi and inside sankaku. Okay, it really comes down to what you value as a leg locker and where you like to go with your leg locks. Okay. Let's talk about some finishing mechanics. So I just want to, we already discussed ankle lock versus outside heel hook, okay? Ankle lock, we need the foot into plantar flexion. We need our hips away from our partner so that we can put wedges on their hip and really create extension. Whereas an outside heel hook, we need dorsiflexion. We need that foot to point straight up at a perpendicular angle. And once we get our dig, we're looking to create rotational braking power. We are looking for a bent leg when we're doing heel hooks. But let's also discuss rotational finishes versus bridging finishes. Okay, so I first learned this concept watching Damien Anderson's outside Ashi Garami instructional. Okay, again, I'll leave the link at the bottom for you guys. He talks about how there's certain times when you might want to use a rotational finish, and there's certain times when you're going to use a bridging finish. So the idea when you're doing a twisting heel hook, twisting submission or rotational based submission, such as a heel hook, you need two wedges moving in opposing directions. Think about ripping a piece of paper. This is the analogy Danaher uses. Okay, so if I'm forcing your knee in one direction and forcing your foot in another direction, I create a shearing force where there's two wedges working in the opposing directions, which will ideally, theoretically, create tremendous braking power. Okay. In a rotational based finish, when might I use that? I might use that in a situation where my back is on the floor. Okay. Once I understood this really helped me finish heel hooks versus standing opponents. So imagine you have an outside Ashi and your partner stands up on you and you lock your legs in a triangle, you lift your hips up, you got your dig and you start cranking and you're like, man, no matter how hard I hip into this leg, I can't get the finish. Why is that? That's because your back is resting on the ground and the ground is acting as a wedge that is impeding your follow through. Okay. In a situation like this, it's better for you to actually rotate your knees into your partner's knee and rotate your partner's heel into that opposing force. So your upper body's moving one way, your lower body's moving the other way. But there's going to be an interesting part of this mechanic. When you're doing this, as your knees turn to one side, your upper body's going the other way, you are not going to drive your elbow into your partner's hip. Rather, you're going to pull your elbow away from your partner. Okay, this is such an important mechanic to understand. What this actually does is it's going to somewhat lengthen your partner's leg and sort of elongate your partner's leg. Okay, so wedges on the hip, driving my hips up slightly just to put a wedge behind the knee. And now from here, as I'm driving my knees into my partner, I am now opening my elbow, which actually opens my partner's opens my partner's leg to a position that is opened past 90 degrees. Okay. This is a really great way to heel hook someone who is standing in your outside Ashi. Now, a bridging finish, when might I use a bridging finish? Imagine I did an outside heist. I'm facing down to the floor now and I catch the dig and I'm ready to finish. As my hips are facing down, I'm now driving into the ground. So there's no wedge behind my back. There's no ground behind my back that's impeding my bridging. So I can just bridge right into the side of the knee now. Okay. So as a general rule, when my back is on the floor and I'm finishing heel hooks from this position, I'm using a rotational based submission where my upper and lower body are working against each other to create opposing shearing forces. When I'm using a bridging finish, we're still using opposing bridging forces, but it's not so much coming from the rotation of my body. It's coming more from me lifting the heel and me bridging into the side of the knee. More specifically, bridging from the inside of the knee towards the outside of the knee, in this case, doing an outside heel hook. All that explanation of mechanics made me tired, and I hope you guys are still following along. Okay, so we just want to quickly now talk about defense. So when we're in the outside Ashi, again, we already talked about a scoop grip versus an Achilles grip. So you need to know from a defensive perspective that when you kick your foot, you put the boot on, it's going to make it harder for your partner to ankle lock you, but it's going to make it a lot easier for them to dig the heel on you. And vice versa, they start digging a heel on you and you start hiding your toes and pointing your foot down. Now they can switch to an Achilles grip. They can start going into their ankle locks. So this is a really great offensive dilemma, as we discussed, and we just need to be aware of it as we're defending. Generally, when I'm an outside Ashi Garami, I want to think about tucking my foot down, pointing my toes down, and turning my knee down towards the floor while tucking my foot behind my partner's butt. In this way, with my foot tucked next to my partner's butt, it's going to be harder for my partner to actually put his wrist all the way around my leg, getting a strong Achilles grip, and it's going to deny them of momentary heel exposure. Okay. Also, this is kind of an unsophisticated way to defend outside Ashi, but I'd be lying if I said it's not effective, is stomp the guy big toe straight in their asshole. kick them in the taint nice and hard, right where the balls meet the taint. That is very hard to argue with when you're attacking the heel hook. And like I said, it's not very sophisticated, but it does work. Stomp the guy in the taint and extract your knee. That can work a lot. Another thing you can do is unlock your partner's feet. Okay, so keep in mind, just as a general concept, when we're defending leg locks, if you can unlock your partner's feet and prevent them from crossing their feet, even if they get a dig, the braking pressure is going to be very, very weak. Only when they lock their feet together do they get tremendous braking pressure. Okay, so what I would recommend at any time we unlock their feet, especially when you're standing over your partner in the outside Ashi. One of the best things we can do is unlock their 2 feet. Okay, another thing you can do when you come up on top is by clearing your knee line. So by literally taking 2 hands on your partner's top leg and just pushing the top leg down so that their leg falls below your knee line. When this happens, a lot of the time you can just high step and clear your leg out. Your partner needs your knee line to be able to heel hook you, okay? So unlocking the feet, clearing your knee line, stomping your partner in the taint, very, very effective ways to escape outside Ashi Garami. There is another thing that you can do, like if your partner is on the ground, they're digging to a heel hook, you can take your secondary leg and often disrupt their dig behind their back by kicking at their elbow. Okay, but be aware, this does expose you to a double trouble. Your partner can reach back and control your secondary leg, and then from here, they can actually heist up and change the position to an Ushiro Ashigarami, a reverse Ashigarami, and they can re-attack you from there. Okay? All right. Well, I mean, there's even more to outside Ashi, I'm sure, that I haven't explained. Of course, if you just reap your partner from straight Ashi and throw your top leg over and lock your feet, you are now creating a reaping, rolling position. When you reap your partner cannot turn into the reap without a great risk of injury. So they have to go with the roll. And quite often with this offensive roll, you can lock your feet on the other side and go into outside Ashi. Okay, you could do this, or we could reap and go to an inside Ashi, and then as we roll, collect the secondary leg, and you find yourself in a Z lock. All right. So again, I kind of want to make outside Ashi great again and really show that the position is a great position to work from. It's just often misunderstood, and a lot of people get countered there because I think they're missing some big details. And one of them, like we discussed, is keeping that Achilles grip until it's time to attack. And also not being afraid to cycle from an Achilles grip to a heel hook grip, going back to an Achilles grip if they ever feel like they're getting positionally flattened. Shout out to Greg Souders, as we always talk about him and the ecological approach. Play games from outside Ashi. You can really get a lot of good training with outside Ashi just by playing games from there. A couple of games I like to play with my guys. First of all, just keep outside Ashi and see if you can prevent your partner from taking your back, counter locking you, or coming up and leg dragging you. If you can do all those things, you're in a really good position to attack, okay? Because you're maintaining control of the position and you're dominating the offensive cycle. Okay, if you're getting countered, if you're getting your back taken, if you're getting yourself smashed, obviously there's work to be done in that position. Then I would say, okay, now apply submissions to the game. Now you're not only just controlling outside Ashi and trying to avoid the things we talked about, now you're trying to do a submission as well. And then from there, you can create offensive games from outside Ashi, not just control games. Okay? Or another goal could be, prevent your partner from clearing their knee line. Prevent your partner from coming up on top. There's so many different games you can build. It just depends on how you manage your constraints and change the parameters of the game to get desired effects. Okay, guys? And that's really the show. That's really how we're going to discuss outside Ashi today. I did just want to mention what I got coming up next. So this upcoming Saturday, ADCC Open is coming to Vancouver for the first time. Kind of a historic event, okay? Pretty cool. I'm going to be competing in the 76 kilogram division. I know the weight classes are slightly different from the ADCC Worlds and the Trials, but I'm going to be doing the 76 division. I'm just cutting a few pounds right now for the tournament on Saturday. And then in a couple of weeks from now, we got Jiu Jitsu Con and Masters Worlds. I'm going down there with a team. I'm going to be competing. I'm going to do all 3 tournaments in 3 days. I'm going to do Masters Worlds, Jiu Jitsu Con Gi, and Jiu Jitsu Con No Gi. and it's going to be deep. The competition is going to be hard, but it's going to be a fun team building event. I fucking hate Vegas, but I'm hoping to have fun and and hopefully have a good showing at the tournament. I do want to say, unfortunately, I just found out last Wednesday that I have ringworm, so I haven't been able to roll, and I'm probably not going to be able to roll this whole week leading up to the tournament. But guys, I feel confident in my skills going into these tournaments. I train really hard leading up to this, and honestly, if I got to take a couple days off, usually if I compete on Saturday, I don't train hard after Wednesday anyways, so I'm really only missing like 3 days of training, and I can supplement that training with assault bike and burpees and different things. Okay, so at this point, I'm kind of letting my body peak and sort of heal and recuperate for the tournament on Saturday, and I'm not too concerned about missing a couple of days because I don't want to bring ringworm on the mats and share it to my teammates. And this is kind of, as someone who's competed in a lot of tournaments, maybe you're listening, maybe you're also a seasoned competitor and you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you're someone who's only done a couple tournaments and you don't have a lot of tournament experience. Understand that you could be so well prepared for a tournament, and then the week of or a couple weeks before, something happens. You get sick, you get an injury, you get ringworm, unforeseen circumstances that are not ideal, and now you're like, fuck, this is not how I wanted to go into the tournament. I'm fortunate that I've been through so many tournaments that I know this likely will not affect my performance. At least it shouldn't affect my performance because I train so consistently and I train hard and I study, and I can still learn by studying. It is a common thing, and it's going to happen. If you're a competitor, it's a common thing. It's going to happen that you are going to have to eventually do a tournament with less than ideal circumstances. Broken toe, flu, food poisoning, whatever it is, okay? Don't get stressed out when things like these happen. It's all part of the journey. It's all part of the experience and the experiment that is going into a competition. If you can go into a competition feeling like you are not 100% and you still do well, you will know next time. You will be able to look back and say, hey, like I can compete even if the chips are down and I'm in a shitty situation. Or, you lost your luggage on the way to the tournament, or, anything can happen. If you go through a tournament with those circumstances and it's not ideal and you were stressing out about it or whatever, and you're like, actually, I did fucking awesome. And look, I was injured and I still was able to win or whatever. Like, think about the confidence that takes you into the next tournament with, okay? Don't look at it as, this is not how I wanted it. This is not how I envisioned my preparation. Now everything's fucked and I'm going to fuck it up. No, don't look at it like that. Look at it as a challenge and an opportunity to test yourself against adversity. So I am not stressing about, not having these next couple days to train and not being able to be on the mats with my team. I'm still going to be there, but obviously I'm not going to be on the mats with them because I'm not a selfish fuck who gives people ringworm. But just look at it as an opportunity and a character building moment and say to yourself, it's time to overcome something. It's not time to feel sorry for myself that I didn't get things my way. That's not how life works, okay? Overcome it and hopefully next week I will be discussing how victorious I was at ADCC Vancouver. I don't know. It's going to be hard. I know there's going to be a good turnout. Of course, P.O. Leclerc is coming, and we're actually going out for dinner later that night. He's in my division. Hopefully we get a chance to compete against each other. And then the next day he's doing a seminar at my gym at On Guard, and I'm happy to have him. I know he's a very high-level guy from TriStar. Pierre, very happy to have him. Happy to have you on the competition mats and happy to have you at my gym. All right, guys, that is the show for today. And please, if you want to support or contact the show, check out the links at the bottom. Guys, if you want to support the show, I don't have a Patreon account. Okay, essentially this is a passion project. I'm not making money on this, but if you like my content and you want to support me and you like the stuff that I'm giving you, please go to my the link at the bottom to my online academy, the On Guard BJJ Online Academy. It's $10 a month. You get access to all of my content, and it will really be helping me out really giving me that motivation to give you guys more and more content. Support what you like or else it goes away. All right. And that is our episode today on Outside Ashi Garami, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope it wasn't too much for you guys to follow as I was explaining going upside down and all this shit. But hey, if you're nerds like me, the Essential Jiu-Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about jiu-jitsu. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Wish me luck at ADCC.